Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Teas. With our inspirational teas, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Teas. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tea and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Teas at dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Hey guys, this is Ernest James, host of the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, and I got a question to ask you. Could you buy me a cheeseburger? Better yet, could you buy me a value meal? Yes? Well, guess what? I don't need a value meal. However, for the cost of a value meal, you can support this podcast to keep us on the air. Just go to Patreon/Deal to Heal podcast and choose any one of the 3 tiers that's available. And if you just want to make a one-time donation, go to Cash App and make a donation to $EJames, the number 418. Make a one-time donation to the Cash App, or again, go to Patreon to support this podcast and keep us on the air. Thanks in advance. Be blessed. Welcome to Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. On this podcast, my guest and I will discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can live a life that is happy, healthy, and whole. So I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I am your host, Ernest James, and this is the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. And I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. Thank you guys once again for tuning in to the podcast. If you haven't already, make sure you guys subscribe to our podcast on all of our social media outlets. Definitely on our YouTube page, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those places you will find us. Just look up Deal to Heal with E. James podcast and you should find us. Also, I'm going to tell you guys how you can win $100 from the podcast. But you have to stay until the end in order to get that information. So our next segment, however you want to look at it, is our product of the week. As you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast, and the way that we sustain ourselves is by your support. And so with that way, we give you guys provide services and products that you can purchase in order to help us keep us on the air, as well as making one-time donations, or how many time donations you may want to make through Cash App, or become a subscriber and support us through our Patreon page. You can do that also. But this is our product of the week segment, and our product of the week this week is our Health is Wealth t-shirt, and you can see it. See it. All right, it says Health is Wealth. And the reason I wanted us to have the Health is Wealth shirt is to remind us that our health is the most expensive things that we have in our lives. Because if we lose our health, a lot of times we sacrifice our health in order to get wealth. And then once we get wealth, we end up having to use it to try to get our health back. So just a reminder that our health is the true wealth to keep our mental health, physical health, all of that stuff up to par. And you can find that at our Deal to Heal teas.myshopify.com, along with our other inspirational teas that we also have there. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our hook you guys can find us there. And I definitely appreciate you guys and your support. So today, just like any other day, we are blessed with the guest, Mr. Maurice. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm so happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem, no problem. First of all, let me say thank you for being here. You could have
Mhm.
been doing anything else, but you are here. You took out time from your busy day to be here with my listeners and myself, and we definitely appreciate it. And I want you to know that up front before we even get started. So we're gonna jump right in. One thing that I do know because of a previous conversation is that you are a girl dad, as myself. And
Yes,
so,
sir.
like anytime I have a girl dad on, I have to ask you two questions just to get off straight off the bat. Number one, what does it mean for you to be a girl dad? And number two, what is something that your daughter has taught you?
Good questions to start things off. What does it mean to be a girl dad? It's been everything for me. My baby girl was my first, right? And she probably couldn't have come at a better time for me. Uh, it's almost like I have to combine the answers. My daughter taught me how to love. Like how to really love. She definitely opened up a part of my heart that wasn't open before that. And so I would say that it means for me like a greater appreciation for life and a greater appreciation for, for everything that God can do in your life if you just open yourself to it. Yeah, my daughter's been everything for me.
All right, all right. Definitely appreciate it. Love it when I hear those conversations. Love to have the conversations with the fathers. I always say my baby's not a baby no more. She actually be 20 in a couple months.
Mm,
So, but she always be my baby, and yeah. So I love to have those conversations. So, Mr. Maurice, let's do me a favor. Introduce yourself to my listeners. Let us know who you are and what it is that you do.
sure, absolutely. So I am an author, a speaker. I was a musician for most of my life, and then basically, and I know we'll get into it, but my life really took a turn for the worst. And so, as I really started to heal from childhood depression, childhood issues, I became not only a counselor but a life coach, and then eventually an author who writes about how to heal from the things you've been through in your life.
All right, all right. So we're gonna get jump right into it. So I know you said you were a musician at one time. So let's go
Mhm,
back. Let's go back before the version of Maurice that we have today. You know,
mhm,
I know there were some struggles and some obstacles that you had to overcome to get you to this point. So let's go
mhm.
back to who you were before and what was kind of your journey to get you to the space that you are now.
Sure, absolutely. The interesting story for me, I often start off at the beginning of college, right? So I'm in college and I'm a music major and I'm doing music and I'm not happy, right? I'm accomplishing things even in school, but I'm a little bit off, moody, edgy in a place. And I walk into a therapist's office and she starts asking the normal questions. Tell me about your family. Tell me about your childhood. And so I'm sitting in one of these sessions, and she says, "Maurice, let me stop you." She says, I'm wondering why it is that when you talk about your life and where you've been in your life, you always talk about things like love, discipline, support. But I'm hearing your stories, and what you're really talking about is trauma and pain and tragedy." And I almost felt like I had said something wrong and like I was tripping and like I presented myself wrong. And so I realized in that moment that my life had had more bumps and bruises than I really had acknowledged or understood, right? So I didn't really deal with it. I didn't really heal with anything at that point in my life. And I just threw myself into my music career. I eventually started, got on the road and played with Grammy winners and Emmy winners and was able to open for, Earth, Wind and Fire and Lupe Fiasco and had licensing deals with MTV, VH1, the Discovery Networks. I mean, really was able to begin to make a name for myself. But unfortunately, I was empty on the inside. None of the accomplishments really did anything for me. I always felt like, what is missing? Why don't I feel whole? Why don't I feel healthy? And by the time I got into my 30s, my music career kind of fell by the wayside. All of the momentum that I had gained had fell off by then, and I was a shell of myself. And it's like, what do you do now? Where do you go now? And where I went was the bottle. I started drinking more. I started smoking more weed, whatever I could do to just numb out and not feel. And so age 32, 2016, that was probably what I call my rock bottom. I had 2 brothers die in 2 years,
Mm.
and I was to the point where I was suicidal, I was depressed, I was anxious, and I didn't wanna do it anymore. And so, that year, I eventually got in a car one day, and I just lost control. I didn't wanna show up to work. I didn't wanna make it. I wanted to drive off the road and just not be here anymore. And on that day, I had an encounter with God, with my higher power. He spoke to me for the first time that I really heard him, and everything changed for me. And so what you're seeing now is kind of the culmination of the last 7 years of my life, where I picked up the pieces. I got married, I had those babies, and started to really pick up the pieces and put things together.
Man, okay. And I want to go back a little bit, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm,
one of the things that I share is my own journey with depression
mhm,
and suicidal ideations, what they call it, basically suicidal thoughts.
mhm,
And I talk about my journey of what it took for me to kind of get out of that place. So
mhm,
I know that you said you had you heard from God and He talked to you, but that's in the spiritual. But even in the spiritual, in the natural, there are some things that you had to do to kind of get yourself out of that
mhm,
place, and maybe even some people that had to help you. So in
mhm,
my own story, I was two things that helped me. Number
mhm,
one, I took the focus off myself and put it on my daughter, who was probably about 7 or 8 at that time,
mhm,
and that became my focus. That if for nobody else or no other reason, I have to stay here for her,
mhm,
and so that was kind of what helped me hold on. And then I had loved ones and friends to also come along and to kind of help me along that journey. So
mhm,
what was some of the things, or one or two of the things that you know in your natural self that, okay, I need to do this, or
mhm.
things that happen to help you to come from that space?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a great question. Well, I'll tell you this to start off. So I am a counselor and a coach, but I see almost everything as spiritual, right? And
Mhm.
so the emotions that we feel, the thoughts that we have, all of those things really are tied into your spiritual life. And so for me, spirituality was my catalyst. I realized I had spent my entire life trying to do everything for mama, trying to do everything for the other people in my life. Um, and it gave me such a negative thought of who I was. And so, honestly, I went first to God. I went first to spirituality, and from there was the catalyst for everything else. So, like a lot of people, they turn to affirmations. They do gratitude on a daily basis. There's a lot of practices a person can do. Almost all of the practices I turned to were spiritual. So I practiced gratitude while saying thank you, God. I did gratitude by saying thank you, God, for it. Right, my affirmations were from Scripture. Everything went back to Scripture for me because it gave me a new life and a new perception and a new meaning. Um, I'm a real driven person. I played sports as in high school, ran track and all that good stuff, and so I was always a self motivated person. But I was always almost motivated by the wrong things. I'll prove them wrong. I'll beat them out. I'll take this over. When I started to change, my life partially changed because I started to focus on proving God right. Right? So, like, for some people, they may not actually be as spiritual as me, to where really I went all spiritual. I read spiritual books. I did spiritual practices. I turned to daily repetition of things that filled me up in here, and I
Mhm.
went from here out, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah, and so the reason why I asked you that, because even with my own situation, definitely I'm a spiritual person also, um, minister, pastor, you know what I mean, and all of
mhm,
that. But that wasn't the way that I got out.
mhm,
Like I said, my spiritual side didn't really change much. You know what I
mm,
mean? But it was my emotional and things that I was going through because of depression and my mom passing and all of that stuff. So my spiritual stance didn't change, but my
mhm.
natural man did. And so
Yeah.
my outreach was in the natural.
Mhm.
But the reason why I like to have these conversations, number one, I like to have it, especially with men, because we don't often talk about it. And so a lot
Almost
of
never.
us suffer in silence. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, some of us in that silence don't make it out,
Absolutely.
And so I like to try to hear everybody's side, because I even had another gentleman on, and his was different because, like I said, my focus was, my way of getting through it was to take the focus off myself and put it on my
Mhm.
daughter.
Mhm.
And in my conversation with him, his was the opposite. His
Mhm.
focus was he had to go to himself and
Yes.
really focus on himself in order to get himself out of that state. And so, that's why I like to have the conversation, because there are so many different ways to look at it and so many ways to get out, when we can see it. Because oftentimes when
Yeah.
we in that dark space, we just can't see it. And I remember
Yeah.
having this conversation just yesterday, actually, with the gentleman on the job, and we was talking about um, suicide, because unfortunately, just the other day, there was a school bus of children on the way to school, high
Mhm.
school, and they're driving, and they noticed somebody literally hanging from an overpass, and
Oh
so
my
they
goodness.
told the bus driver, "Hey, this is somebody hanging there," and the bus driver didn't pull over, thank God, but he called the police, and the police came. But it was just that, having that conversation about, what would make someone take their own life,
Mhm.
and we're having a conversation, and we're gonna get back to the other stuff, but I think this is important. But we're having a conversation because we're talking about it, and he was saying that, a lot of times people, feel like suicide is a selfish act. And
Mhm.
I admitted to him that before my own battle with it, I thought the same way.
Mhm.
I was like, why would you do that to your family? Because you may stop your pain, but the pain doesn't stop; it just transfers. So all
Mhm.
it did is just go from you, but now it's on your family and friends and loved ones who cared about you. But going through my own battle with it in the time period that I understood very well how, because you
Mhm.
get to a point where you just don't see no way out,
Absolutely.
and I would say everybody's stress hole of pain and things that they can take is not the same. So
Mhm.
what may seem like a heavy burden to me may not seem like much to you, but it might just be that one thing on that day that'll just like, all right, I can't take it anymore, and but it's that not being able to see your way out, not being able to see an end in sight, that you
Mhm.
begin to start feeling so helpless.
Mhm.
And, I just think that we as men, especially if we can, admit that, yeah, we go through this, we're dealing with this,
Mhm.
and to be able to open up the conversation to other men. And that's why I like to have the conversation, when someone has dealt with it and made it to the other side. 'Cause like I said, a
Yeah.
lot of us don't.
Well, and if you really think about a lot of the things even that you just said, and just to kind of go, even deeper into where we were before, everything you just said is very spiritual, right? You're looking on the inside and you have no hope. You see no way out. You see no light, right? That's spiritual. Like that's the deepest part of me feeling lost. It's not on the surface. That's not just in my head.
Mhm.
That's touching my heart. And so, the way that I teach clients is I say spirituality is inward, then upward. The first part of spirituality doesn't necessarily have to do with your higher power. The first part of spirituality is, who is this person? Am I okay? And if I'm not okay, what's keeping me from being okay? What have I been through that I haven't healed from? What have I lived through that's still affecting me 10 years later, 20 years later? A lot of the reason that we have a moment and that moment seems to push us over the edge is because, as men especially, we have so many moments we live through that we never really heal from. We don't talk about them. We don't journal about them. We don't cry about them because, big boys don't cry, right?
Right.
And so you build up until finally something pushes you over the edge. To me, that truly is a spiritual issue. It's the deepest part of you being lost. And I think that the way that you get past that and you get through that is by deeply healing those wounds so that now the wounds become scars, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. That makes a whole
Mhm.
lot of sense, and I'm glad that we went there.
Mhm.
Like I said, I love talking to men about these things, as well
Mhm.
as other things that we deal with. But that just happens to be, especially in this climate now.
Absolutely.
At the time of recording this, I want to say we kind of made it through COVID, but we still in it.
Right.
I don't think we ever be through with it. But just knowing that over these last 2 years or so, a lot of things have changed.
Mhm.
And we've lost a lot of loved ones, and unfortunately, some of those loved ones may have taking their own life because of
Mhm.
situations and job loss, and even other family members loss, and things like that. So I definitely wanted to touch on that. But let's go back a little bit, because one of the reasons why we were talking about this was dealing with healing,
Mhm.
which is a good deal of both of our messages,
Absolutely.
that we're trying to deal with. And so when we think about, just our things from our past that we've dealt with, you know what I mean? And how that past, if we don't heal from some of our past traumas and things like that, how they affect us in our present, you
Mhm.
know. And so just dealing with that, and coming to a realization of that, what is something that, when you're talking to your clients, just to get them to recognize that, like, whatever in your past that you haven't healed from, you
Mhm.
gotta you gotta take care of it today, because if not, it's just gonna show up again tomorrow.
Exactly. I always say anything you don't deal with in life has a way of dealing with you, right?
Mhm.
So if you're not dealing with it, if you're not facing it, it's standing in your face and it's not going to leave. So, it's a hard reality because I know I'm not the only one who's been there.
Mhm.
You're like, there's no way the stuff from my childhood is keeping me as a grown man from accomplishing things. There's no way that the stuff I went through 10 years ago is affecting me today. We don't really want to believe that. And so, what I always tell people is you have to get yourself to slow down. We're talking take some deep breaths, take a step back from the situation, and ask yourself, if I'm wound up, if I'm wrapped up emotionally, what am I really mad about? I don't know about you, but I'm married, right? And usually if my wife and I have an argument, we're not really arguing about whatever we're arguing about.
Mhm.
We're talking about bread and cheese, and the argument is about something that happened 6 months ago, right? It's never about what you think it's about. So when you find yourself struggling, if you're getting angry, if you're short-tempered, if you're frustrated, if you're emotional, if you're in a dark place, what's this really about? And if you begin to search it, a lot of times what you find out is, I want to say that I've been sad for 3 months. The truth is, I've been sad for 3 years. I want to say that I've been in a dark place for 6 months, but the truth is, 6 years ago, this thing happened and I ain't been right since then.
Mhm.
I think that the way that we heal, the way you're talking about, only happens through true honesty. Like, I got to get real. I can't sit here and lie about what I feel and lie about where it came from. I have to be so brutally honest with myself that the only way up is out of the situation.
Yeah. So I was in so like yourself, I'm a speaker also,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so I was in a training a couple of days ago, and in the training, one of the things that the instructor said was, inventory your experiences, right?
Mm.
And because as speakers, we want to be relatable when we're talking to
Absolutely.
our audience.
Mhm.
And so we speak through our own experiences, and that's how we
Mhm.
relate to be able to get our points across. And
Mhm.
so what he said was, inventory your experiences.
Mhm.
And I sat down the other day, after this, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write down my experiences. So I'm like, I'm gonna go all the way back as far as I can remember.
Uh-huh.
And the crazy thing about when you start doing that, you realize how much you forgot that you've actually been through.
Man,
You know what I mean? It's like,
absolutely.
oh dang, I forgot I made it through that. You know what I mean? Like, I forgot that happened to me.
Absolutely.
Because you've been blessed to come so far. You
Mhm.
know, but the reason why I say that, because some of those things do affect you now, right?
Mhm.
And so one of the things I had to come to grips with the other day, just thinking about it, which has been, and I recognize now has been an issue in my relationships,
Mhm.
right? Is my contentment, right?
Mm.
So I grew up poor, like
Mhm.
we was good at first. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? My daddy
Mhm.
was working and everything was cool. Hit a snag, just threw the whole family off
Mm.
balance. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so we went through some years where we were just like broke. You know what I mean? And so my idea coming from that is okay, I made it through that. So if I ever hit rock bottom again, I'm not going to stress about it because I made it
Mhm.
through it once, I can make it through it again.
Right.
But as a reference point, as I began to work and achieve things and accomplish things within myself, I began to get comfortable because my reference point was so low.
Was so
It's
low.
like, I'm good here. As long as
Mhm.
I don't get back there, I'm good.
Absolutely. Yep.
But when you get in a relationship, you know what I mean?
Oh,
It's like you
absolutely.
get in a relationship and you got a family, they might not be good there. You
Right.
know, and then they haven't had the experience that I had to have a lower bottom. So this
Mhm.
where my contentment state is may
Mhm.
be their bottom.
Maybe their
So,
bottom.
okay, we got to
Absolutely.
get a little, we got to get a little more. And so I've learned just in my own experiences of how your past comes up and shows up in your life. And I'm like, okay, I have to give myself out of the content stage because even though I feel like I'm good. Like, okay, if I'm going to be in a relationship, if I'm going to have a family, if I'm going to, go that route, I'm gonna have to go push myself a little further to get out of my comfort zone, not for me,
Mhm.
but for my loved ones and those that I care for. And so
Mhm.
that's just one of the things that I just came to me within the last couple of days, just thinking about like, okay, I gotta step the game up a little bit. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
What you're describing, that's really that difference between thriving and surviving, right? Like if you've ever been in survival mode, and I know in my childhood, there was, verbal abuse, physical abuse, there's a lot of stuff that went down. And so you're just trying to survive. And so how you look at it is like, the ceiling is surviving. And if you don't hit the ceiling, that means you're tanking into I'm dying on the inside, right? I'm dying of fear. I'm dying of frustration. I'm tired of heartbreak, whatever it is, right? And so at some point, we're supposed to kind of level up to now what I'm trying to do is thrive. So thriving looks like true happiness. It looks like personal growth. It looks like what did you say? Health is your wealth, right? So
Mhm.
I want to have health, physical health, spiritual health, mental health, financial health. That's thriving. And if I tank, I want to get to the point of survival. Well, if I never go into a thriving mindset, then I'm still in survival mode all this. Well, I'm just above surviving, so I might as well be doing okay as long as I'm surviving. I had to learn that same thing, and the person who taught me was my wife. I remember one day she was telling me, she said, Maurice, I really need you to help with X, Y, and Z. And I said, I've seen my daddy, I've seen your daddy, I've seen our grandpa. I know that no man in your life has ever done what it is that you just asked me to do. She said something to me that was so deep, right? She said, who said I was comparing you to them? And what I
Mm,
realized in that moment was that she was comparing me to my potential. She was looking at the greatness in me and she was saying, Maurice, there's more in you. Why would I want you to settle for what I've seen? I want you to go for what I've seen, right? And that's kind of the role of a healthy relationship is that you speak life into one another and you up the bar. And so that changed it for me too. I was like, you know what, you're right. I can't just focus on, well, at least I'm better than the bad stuff I dealt with. Yeah, but
right.
what are you capable of?
Right.
That's a different
Right.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah, that is, man. That is. And a lot of times that's where it goes. Cause even like with me, it was from a relationship that I was able to even identify that.
Mhm,
It's like, all right, yeah, you're doing okay for you. You know what I mean? But if
mhm.
you're talking about having a family and supporting the family, all of that, you're gonna have to step it up a little bit. You
That's
know what I
it.
mean? And so, and
That's
that was
it.
my whole thing. And sometimes that's the blessing of having that help me. You know what I mean? To be
Mhm.
able to see you for who you
Unbelievable.
can be, number one, and then, like you
Yes.
said, to be able to speak into you.
Yes.
And we're not even gonna get on relationships because that's a whole other story. So, but just really that to go from one stage to another, right, in your life, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And we're still kind of piggyback off what you just said because your wife was able to see a part of you or who she wanted you to be. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Not just, who you were and reflection to those around you, you know,
Hmm.
but who you could be, and
Hmm.
maybe even in her experience, like, yeah, I've experienced my dad, I've experienced my brothers, I experienced my uncles, all that. But I
Exactly.
know for herself, she like, yeah, that's what they did, but I need more,
Right.
so I need you to be more than what they were or what they
Right.
are. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
so again, she was not comparing to who they were, but I'm comparing to who I know you can be and who I need you to be. You know,
Right.
so even with ourselves, to be able to show up for ourselves in that same way and just connecting, like, okay, I want more for myself,
Yes.
and I know that there's a possibility, there's a version of me that I can see in the distance, and I need to get there. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So let's talk a little bit about that, just like that hope and that feeling of, what, I see something,
Hmm.
for myself, and I just need the perseverance to kind of keep going in order to reach it. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Hmm. Well, I noticed at the very beginning of the show you were talking about purpose, right? And I see walking in purpose as walking in the fullest version of who you were put on the earth to be. That's your purpose. Like, I'm here doing what I'm supposed to be doing, how I'm supposed to be doing it. I think that what happens is, okay, so the topic today, how big is your butt, right? So your butt is anytime you say, "Man, I feel like I could accomplish so much, but oh, I'd be so much farther in my life, but well, I know I have the potential to, but." Anytime that but is in your way, that's because that stuff from your past we already talked about is
Mhm.
standing between you and your purpose, right? It's that dead weight you're carrying with you. I think about this again from a spiritual standpoint. Scripture says that before you were formed in your mother's womb, God knew you. The question is, what did he know about you? Like, what made you worth knowing? And a lot of times, the stuff we deal with in our life, the disappointment, the frustration, it bogs us down and it gives us a false version of who we are. So the key is you get healthy, you get whole, and then you take a look and you say, well, if I can see a glimpse of it, it's only a glimpse. I can actually be greater than what I can see. So if I just work a little bit at a time, just a little bit every day, right? Maurice, work at what? Whatever you need to work at. Some days you got to work on your self-esteem. Some days you got to work on your mindset. Some days you got to work on your communication skills. Whatever it is, if I just chip away at it, like you said, that perseverance, eventually I'm going to look up and I'm not going to represent what I used to. Uh, the greatest thing a person can say about you is you don't look like what you've been through. I don't
Mhm.
really think I look like what I've been through.
Right,
That's
right.
telling me that I'm at least starting to get to that place that I could. And I'm not all the way there and I'm not a finished product. But today I've gone as far as I can go today, and that's good enough. And I think that's the key, is just a little by little we got to move in that direction.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that even with that, there comes a part of it where we really have to be intentional,
Hmm.
right, about what we want and where we're trying to go to. So I usually choose a word for, at the beginning of each year. I don't even think I did it this year. I'm gonna have to do that. But so my word last year was intentional, right?
Hmm.
I wanted to be intentional about everything that I did. Okay, what is my goal? What am I going to do to get it?
Hmm.
What are the steps that's needed for me to accomplish it? And I think that being intentional is a definite bridge between where you are and where you're trying to go.
100%.
Like I always say, when I'm talking to students, like, you have to have a plan.
Hmm.
There's the old saying, when you fail to plan, you plan
You
to
plan to
fail.
fail.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's like, look, if you don't have something that's for you, because I always say with our students, when you're in grammar school, when you're in high school, everybody has a plan for you. All you got to do is get up and do it. Your parents have a plan for you. They got things for you to do. The school got a plan for you. They got things for you to do. If you're on a team of some sort, your coaches got a plan for you. You just got to
Hmm.
execute on it. But
Hmm.
once you graduate, everybody else's plan for you is done.
That's it.
So at that point, you have to have a plan for yourself,
You sure
because if
do.
you don't, then you're liable to swing whichever way everybody else is going, or whichever way the situations that may occur that say, oh, well, it seems like this is the way to go. And you kind of be blown either way because you don't have your own sense of direction. And so
Mhm.
I think that when we are intentional about what we want and how we're going to get there, that's half the battle, you know.
Yes. I agree completely. And one book that was really helpful for me, I read the book Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. I read that a couple years ago. And habit number two was called Begin with the End in Mind. And basically what it said is kind of think out on like where do you see yourself and what how do you want to be remembered? What do you want your legacy to be? Not just like how much money you leave behind, like the memory you leave behind. What do you want that to look like? And then in that chapter, it said, think of yourself like a corporation, like give yourself a mission statement. And so what I did is I wrote down for myself, and this is all I wrote. I said, the day I die, I want somebody to say he lived his best life, then he taught others how to do the same.
Mhm.
And I said, if they can say that about me, I did it because he lived his best life says he's always improving. He's always experiencing new things. He's always healing. He's always doing something to better himself. And then there's that whole give back thing, right? If I gave it back, if I taught other people, then I was a servant. I served others, right? And so I feel like if I can do that, I can die empty. And if that's the plan, it gives me the ability to change the plan whenever I need to. So I can sit down and say, this year, this is what I want to accomplish. But if I sense that I got it wrong at the beginning of the year, okay, you said you were going to live your best life. If this direction is not your best life, change the plan. Now we're going this way.
Mhm.
And so I think that the key is you have to plan and you have to plan with your heart. And then you have to be open to the fact that your plan may need to be adapted.
Right, right, right.
That's
Yeah.
the key. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that I teach the 3 A's when it comes to challenges, that
Mm.
you have is admitting it. Uh, dang it, my mind will go blank right now, right? So it's admission, um, amend, and ascend. That's it.
Mm. Mhm.
So admit it. What is the problem?
Mhm.
I'm dealing with whatever this is. Then you
Mhm.
got to amend it. Okay, what do I need to change about it in
Mm.
order to make it work for me? And then
Mhm.
once you amend it, then you execute so you can ascend from
Mhm.
that space.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what I teach when you're going through your challenges. And like you said,
Mhm.
if your plan some derails with the plan, all right, we got to change the plan.
We gotta
Okay,
change it up.
let's look at those 3 A's. Let's accept. Okay, this is what's happening.
Mhm.
What do we need to do from here?
Mhm.
And I haven't read that book yet. It's on my list, but I haven't read it yet.
It's
Um,
worth it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm definitely gonna check it out. But speaking of books, you happen to have a book, which just kind of reflects on the name of this episode. So let's talk about a little bit about your book. First of all, let's talk about the journey of writing, right? And I always
Sure.
bring this up because I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna finish it. I've been writing this book. I said, in the midst of me trying to write one hardcover book, I've written 3 ebooks. You know what I mean?
I understand. Lord have mercy, I understand.
So how was
Uh,
that process of writing? How was that for you?
painful,
Just to try to get
painful,
it done.
okay? Painful. Uh, it's funny, this is my second book, so, it's called Your Butt is Too Big, right? And this is my second book, but it's really my first book, right? So this book took me 4 years to write all the way through and put out. Now I wrote another book in one day and I put that one out real quick, right? But this one, I gave up writing this book about 10 times. You know, when you like, you know what? Screw the book. You throw the book against the wall. I'm not writing this book. Somebody else can write the book. It's not for me to write this book. Yeah, I did all that. So to any aspiring authors, if you're struggling, just know it's normal. And this journey was really so within it, I talk a little bit about some of what I've already shared, some of that childhood trauma, some of my past pain, some of my failures, my heartbreaks, the things that caused my butt, right? And I realized with every part of the book I was writing, I was really journaling, right? So you start writing down what you've been through, and it's just like what you described earlier when you said, I forgot some of the stuff I had been through. I forgot some of the things that were said to me. I forgot some of the things that I felt deep down on the inside. And some of those things never made it in these pages, right? There's a lot more things that were on the cutting room floor because I
Mhm.
didn't want to put people in too bad of a light, or I didn't think it was the time to share this part of my life. And so the journey was honestly a journey of growth that as I wrote, I had to face. As I wrote, I had to deal. As I wrote, I had to say, okay, this story right here is triggering me so much that I know I'm not as healthy in this area as I thought I was.
Mhm.
I know that I've got more work I got to do. Let me go back to the therapist and talk about this. Let me go sit down with my wife and cry some tears. Like, let me sit down with God and pray about this because I'm not okay. And so, this particular book, it helps people to confront what they've been through almost in the way that you just described it. You started off by saying acceptance, right? I call it evaluation. You have to know, like, you have to look at your situation. You
Mhm.
can never fix something that you won't look at and address. So I have to start off by looking at it. And then, and what I do is I go through 7 principles. I won't go through all of them, but the first one is the evaluation. And the second is what I call the marathon mindset. And all that is to say, healing is not a moment, it's a journey, right? Like, I don't just like click my heels and spin around in a circle and all of a sudden, pow, here I am, I'm better. Like, I get a little bit better and then I grow a little bit older and then I got to heal through that issue a little bit more. That's real life. And so I feel like as I healed through the journey of writing, as I grew through the journey of writing, I created a pathway for somebody else to read the book and do the same, right? I didn't try to say in this book, hey, do things like I did. I said in the book, find your way to do what you're meant to do. Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. You said, I had to look at my daughter. I had to see that she was my reason to live. Well, who can tell you you're wrong? Right, you had to find the spark inside of you. And I think that's the key, is we all have to look inside of ourselves and find the thing that'll help us focus on hope and promise versus focusing on that but that stands in our way.
Yeah, yeah, man, Maurice. We could be on here all night, all day. So I don't want us to do that. I want to be respectful of your time and your family. But man, I appreciate you so much for being on, for coming on. I want you to leave us with word of advice, inspiration. Have you feel free, feel fit to express yourself, and to definitely let us know where we can get the book
Mhm.
and your social media handles and things like that, where we can find you at. Because I definitely want us to support you. So I'll give you a second to think about that. To my listeners, man, I told you guys that I will let you know how you could win $100 from the podcast, and you win $100 from the podcast by entering our super subscriber contest. And what does that mean? That means you must first subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and our podcast on Spotify, all three. And after you do that, you would text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 to qualify for a chance to win $100 from the podcast. So the contest is ongoing, so it never stops, and it's random. So there's no specific day or time. At any moment, I can just be like, all right, today's the day, and pull a name, and you win. It's just that simple. Don't cost you anything. You're doing it already. You're already listening. You're already, subscribed to some of our social media platforms. So just subscribe to all three so you can enter the contest. So again, to win $100 from the podcast, you must enter our $100 super subscriber contest by subscribing to our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and our podcast on Spotify. Then text the word WIN, WIN, to the number 866-326-0730 to qualify to win $100. Maurice, again, let me say thank you again for being on. I really appreciate it. Definitely enjoy having this conversation with you and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. Thank you for being on. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. First of all, I just appreciate you having me. And in terms of what I would say, I just want to say you're worth it. you're worth getting better, right? The reality is that healing through pain, healing through hard times, it's hard. It's painful. And so I just want you to know that you're worth taking the time to get better. You're worth the therapist appointments. You're worth the hard conversations. You're worth the tears. And so I just want to tell everybody you're worth it. In terms of where to find my book, first of all, you can visit yourbuttistobig.com. You can purchase a copy there. And then, of course, you can go to, barnesandnoble.com. You can go to Amazon, wherever books are sold. But definitely head up to my website. Hit me up on social media at Maurice F. Martin, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
All right. We can't end it any better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where our mission is to help people to deal, to heal, and to fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So until next time, be blessed. Hey guys, I know you're enjoying the podcast. However, don't forget to join our text line at 866-326-0730. That's 866-326-0730 in order to receive text messages with new events and things that is going on and new episodes as they release. All right, see you in a minute. Thanks for listening to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. Remember to listen, like, subscribe, and share. This episode has been brought to you by Deal to Heal Teas. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tea and be inspired all day. Let's go to dealtohealteas.myshopify.com. Remember, our mission is to help you to deal, heal, and fulfill. Deal with your problem, heal from the pain, and fulfill your purpose. Thanks for listening.